Hello, my name is Dr. Luke Bell. I'm lecturer in molecular horticulture at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. This is a screencast of material originally made available for the module Principles of Horticulture and Crop Production from the years 2020 to 2025. Please note that some of the details may now be outdated.
Learning outcomes are to describe the origin and history of spinach, describe the characteristics of the plant's leaves and the factors affecting growth, and give examples of the largest spinach-producing nations in the world. So spinach, to give its Latin name, is Spinacea oleracea. So spinach originates from Asia, Iran, and parts of the Middle East. So the exact location isn't known, but it's thought to be in this part of the world. It's been cultivated for over 2,000 years in that region and was known to the ancient Greeks and Romans. And it was mentioned in Chinese literature in the 7th century. It was then cultivated later by the Spanish Moors in the 12th century, and then later brought to the Americas by colonists in the 17th century. So spinach is a leafy annual crop, again part of the Amaranthaceae family of plants, so the same as chard and beetroot. It's cultivated exclusively for its leaves, and it's generally cold tolerant and can withstand temperatures as low as -12 degrees centigrade. The growth habit of spinach plants is that they tend to form a kind of rosette structure of the leaves in a compressed stem, so they're quite short and squat at the early parts of their vegetative life stage. Harvestable plants can grow to about 30 centimeters tall. Any larger than this and the plants typically become too big and might have already started to flower. Leaf length for different markets varies according to the desired product. So for example, baby spinach might be incorporated into baby leaf salads, whereas larger leaves might be intended for the fresh market. And typically both leaves and stems are harvested. The spacing determines the leaf size and number of the crop. So you can see quite an evenly spaced spinach crop here. So this is kind of, I guess, a medium-sized spinach production. So the leaf blades can range anywhere from an ovate shape to elongated and triangular, and some, as we saw in the previous slide, had this kind of distinctive arrowhead type shape. The growth habit varies from prostrate, i.e. flat against the ground, to upright, and this depends on the cultivar, but also the planting density can influence this as well. The leaf margins of the leaves are pretty smooth typically, but with the arrowhead type cultivars, this can sometimes have some kind of serration there as well. And the leaf texture ranges from a smooth to a heavily wrinkled, almost Savoy type leaf. So as the spinach plant matures, the stem will begin to elongate and flowering will be initiated. So after bolting or after flowering is initiated, leaf growth is minimal, and so therefore the crop will become unsaleable after this point. So it's important to monitor the crop for signs of bolting, as temperatures greater than 20 degrees C under long day cycles will promote this flowering and could potentially write off a crop. Spinach roots are typically quite shallow and fibrous, as you can see here in this slide. They typically form a narrow taproot which has very few lateral branches on it. In terms of reproduction, spinach plants are quite unusual in that they're dioecious, so that means that they have separate males and females in different individuals, rather than being a hermaphrodite in the same plant. So they also exhibit sexual dimorphism, so that means that the males have a different appearance and structure to females. So male plants are typically very small and they flower very quickly, whereas female plants tend to be much slower to flower and typically produce much more vegetative growth. So this propensity for the females to produce more foliage and flower later is obviously favourable for crop productions. There are also cultivars called monoecious, so that means that individual plants have both male and female reproductive organs, but those are located on different flowering stems. So those typically have a growth habit which is more characteristic of a dioecious female than a male. The F1 hybrids of spinach which are produced for that reason are typically monoecious, so that helps with the uniformity of the plants and their growth rate. In a breeding program, any males which are identified within that population will be removed because they have the undesirable characteristic of being quite small and are much quicker to flower. So the older open pollinated cultivars, which typically used to be grown, were very highly variable for their leaf quality and shape and size, and that was as a result of different plants being male or female, so they weren't uniform. Spinach seeds can be quite smooth and round, but typically heirloom varieties have a kind of very pointed seed coating, almost thorny in appearance, and so these are considered to be winter types, and the smooth brown seeds, which you can see in this slide, are the more common cultivated types, which are referred to as summer types. So around about 100 seeds weighs about 1 gram of spinach seeds. So spinach is perhaps the most economically important leafy salad vegetable in temperate regions. Heirloom cultivars tend to bolt quite quickly under long day conditions, so they've kind of fell out of favour with commercial productions which now prefer or favour F1 hybrids. So the heirloom cultivars typically have a narrower leaf shape and could be quite bitter, but those new cultivars, F1 hybrids, have improved resistance to bolting, broader leaves, and generally have a much more mild and pleasant flavour. So there are three main types of spinach cultivar. So the first is the Savoy leaf type, and this has the characteristic kind of wrinkly dark green appearance, which is kind of reminiscent of kale leaves. These are often referred to as the Bloomsdale type, and most of these commercially will be F1 hybrids, which are bred for bolting resistance. Next we have the flat, also called smooth leaf types. These typically have quite a broad leaf shape, which as the name suggests, are flat and smooth. These can be washed much more easily than the Savoy types, but when they're put into packaging they often stick together, whereas the Savoy types, and because they're wrinkled, they don't have that kind of problem. So there's less issues with the post-harvest packaging for the Savoy types, which are nowadays more common and popular. Smooth leaf types are often grown for the canning and processing markets because of that fact. Then we have the third type, which is kind of a halfway house between the two, and is known as semi-Savoy. So it's not quite as wrinkled as the true Savoy types, and it's not quite as smooth and flat as the smooth flat types. So it's kind of a in between, and has beneficial characteristics of both of those other cultivars. So they have this slightly wrinkled texture, which improves its processing. So it's still easy to wash, but it also doesn't stick together when it's put into the plastic bags, for example. And this type is often used and incorporated into the ready-to-eat salad bag market, for example. Then lastly we have baby spinach, which I've mentioned it isn't a true cultivar type, as the leaves are just simply immature leaves of the other three cultivars types which I've mentioned. But I thought I'd point it out because it's now quite common for this type of leaf, this so-called kind of baby leaf, to be incorporated into different types of salads and products. So the leaves and the plants are sown at very high density, and they grow very quickly and harvested very quickly, so there can be quite a fast turnaround in the baby leaf salad market. So this makes it efficient. and it also, the fast growth and high density helps to crowd out any weeds which might be present in the fields. Lastly, we'll just look at some production statistics. By far and away the largest producer of spinach is China, growing approximately 723,000 hectares of spinach and producing 27,500 tons per year. So that's a very high efficiency of tonnage per hectare. And it's achievable because of the diversity of different growing regions in China. So from season to season, it can be shifted around. So production is essentially year-round in that country. And also the conditions for growth also favour multiple cuts of the leaves, which I'll go on to talk about in the final part of this screencast. But other large producers of spinach include Indonesia, the USA, and Japan. And also other regions in Asia and Africa also produce relatively large amounts, but still, compared to other crops, it's not as much as, for example, as production of kale or cabbage or things like that. So finally, we'll just summarise. Spinach originates from Asia and the Middle East and has been cultivated for millennia. Plants are grown for their leaves and are generally quite frost tolerant. Spinach is a dioecious species, with male plants being smaller and are quicker to flower than the females. The three main cultivar types of spinach are Savoy, flat smooth, and semi-Savoy, and China is the world's largest producer of spinach.